Psalms 49 verse 11 to verse 19. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. They think they're going to live forever. You call the place after your own name, say, this is the land of Hendrik. But you're not going to live forever. If you do that, it's almost like you think you're going to live forever. And their dwelling places to all generations, they call their lands after their own names. Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. This their way is their folly, yet their posterity approve their sayings. Selah. Like sheep they are laid in the grave. Death shall feed on them, and the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning, and their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwelling. So the type of grave awaiting the wicked is not as pleasant as the grave awaiting the righteous person. But God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave. So here the grave actually has a power. The grave wants to take people in and put them down, but God has a power keeping them from away from that power. For he shall receive me, Selah. Be not thou afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. For when he dieth, he shall carry nothing away. His glory shall not descend after him. Though while he lived, he blessed his soul, and men will praise thee. When thou doest well to thyself, he shall go to the generation of his fathers. They shall never see light. So we see that these wicked people, they don't ever see light. And so there's a distinction between the grave of the wicked and the grave of righteous people. In the next psalm, David is going to explain something about the grave, but it sounds like he's explaining something of the grave of the wicked. And he explains it in a way as if it feels to him like he's going that way at the moment. So maybe something prophetic happened in his life, like we spoke about earlier. Psalms 88 from verse 3 to verse 8. For my soul is full of troubles, and my life draweth nigh unto the grave. I am counted with them that go down into the pit. So see the key word, the pit. The pit is negative. I am as a man that hath no strength, free among the dead, like the slain that lie in the grave, whom thou rememberest no more. And so this is a terrifying thought, not being remembered by God. If God remembers you, then God can do something good for you. But if God just forgets you and just doesn't care about you anymore, then God can't do any good thing for you anymore. And so if you are a believer, you want God to remember you. And they are cut off from thy hand. Thou hast laid me in the lowest pit, in darkness. We will read more about the darkness of the lowest pit at a later point in time. In the deeps, thy wrath lieth hard upon me. And so here we see something. Why would God's wrath lie upon somebody? It's because God is displeased with that person. Because he needs to address the evil things that person has done. So his wrath is lying upon him within that deeper, dark place where the wicked go to the grave. And thou hast afflicted me with all thy waves, Selah. Thou hast put away my acquaintance far from me. Thou hast made me an abomination unto them. I am shut up and cannot come forth. So when you're in the grave, you cannot come forth out of that grave again. You're there permanently. We're going to Proverbs 30, verse 15 to verse 16. The horse leech has two daughters, crying, give, give. There are these things that are never satisfied. Yea, 4 things say not, it is enough. The grave and the barren womb, the earth that is not filled with water, and the fire that saith not, it is enough. So the grave is like a horse leech. It never says it has enough. It just wants more and more and more. It's like the grave has a mouth and it opens wide and it says, more. I want more people to die. I want more people to fall down into the depths of darkness. And this is a depressing picture. And when you live, sometimes you see people die, and it's a depressing scene when you see people. There's another person that died. Especially when you become around the age of 80 and 90, you see all your old friends, all your family, they're going down to the grave, and it's a depressing scene, and you think to yourself, wow, the grave is like a horse leech. It's eating all these people alive. That's something that the people of the Old Testament saw. So the grave was at a negative picture in that time frame. Ecclesiastes, now remember, Ecclesiastes is always talking about things under the sun, because that's why that phrase is mentioned so many times inside Ecclesiastes. So don't expect a lot of spiritual, invisible things seen in Ecclesiastes, especially when it's talking about dying. So Ecclesiastes 9 verse 10, whatsoever thy hand findeth do it with thy might. For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest. So here you see again that the wisdom of dead people and the knowledge of dead people just can't come to us. We can't gain any knowledge and wisdom from them. And should they gain any wisdom and knowledge on that side, it's not going to make a difference about what they did during their lives. So there's this silence in the grave, and it's not going to be beneficial to you, and in a sense it's not going to be beneficial to them. Song of Solomon, chapter 8 verse 6. Set me as a seal upon thine heart. Okay, this is the lovers speaking to one another. As a seal upon thine arm, for thy love is strong as death. Jealousy is cruel as the grave. As cruel as the grave, the coals thereof are coals of fire, which hath a most vehement flame. So here we come to the thought that there is a flame in the grave. And that flame speaks of some cruelness in the grave. So there's a place in the grave where there's cruelness and there's a flame. Hosea chapter 13 verse 9 to 14. O Israel, thou hast destroyed thyself, but in me is thine help. I will be thy king. Where is any other that may save thee in all thy cities? And thy judges, of whom thou saidest, give me a king and princes. I gave thee a king in mine anger, and took him away in my wrath. The iniquity of Ephraim is bound up, his sin is hid. So they did a lot of bad things. The sorrows of a travailing woman shall come upon him. He is an unwise son, for he should not stay long in the place of the breaking forth of children. I will ransom them from the power of the grave. I will redeem them from death. O death, I will be thy plagues. O grave, I will be thy destruction. Repentance shall be hid from mine eyes. So there is sin. And God is going to be addressing the sin by being the plagues of death and the destruction of the grave. So at some point in time in the future, God is going to have victory over the grave. Now this is still the Old Testament, so we see this being fulfilled in the New Testament when we read New Testament things. So in the Old Testament, the grave had a greater power over the people. But in the New Testament, some things happened that destroyed some of this power, and eventually it's completely destroyed.